A Quiet Place Day One is the new movie in the Quiet Place franchise, which became really popular back in 2018 with John Krasinski directing the initial entry. That movie followed a family trying to survive in a bleak post-apocalyptic landscape that had been decimated by blind aliens who hunt using sound. Now, the movie was a huge success and spawned a sequel that was set to come out in 2020, and it even had its world premiere before being delayed due to a global pandemic. And the movie A Quiet Place Part 2 came out a year later and gave us a glimpse at the beginning of how this alien invasion started. Meteors and debris raining down from outer space brought these alien creatures to our world, and it's really cool to see how it all happened. But A Quiet Place Part 2 mostly focused on other stuff. The lore at the beginning was just the hook. It wasn't what the film was about, and now we finally have A Quiet Place Day One. The long-awaited entry in a series that's become so popular has asked the question, how do you keep making sequels to a movie that's basic idea has already been explored so much? And A Quiet Place Day One does a pretty good job with its premise. These movies have felt like throwbacks, to be honest. They're very simple premises about alien invasions. It feels like something we would get more in the 90s, back when there were a lot of disaster movies. Now everything is very complicated and based on IP and franchises, and has such deep lore. But this just has such a simple blockbuster concept of people trying to stay quiet to avoid aliens that will kill you if you make a sound. And the studio has made a whole franchise out of it. So today, let's talk about what works with A Quiet Place Part 1, and how even its positives overshadow its negatives. Here's how to make a good prequel, but also how to make an original entry in a franchise that stands out among the rest. So the film opens with a text talking about how New York City is incredibly loud, and there's always noise, and right off the bat, similar to a movie like Jordan Peele's Us, it has this vague piece of text, of information, which is very informative, and instead of having some cheesy horror hook, like someone being killed or showing a death, it lures you in without providing any overt horror. It is just foreshadowing what's to come, and sometimes that's enough. So the movie follows Sam, played by Lupita Nyong'o, a woman dying from cancer who's living in a hospice center outside of New York City. And right away, there's a great subversion of expectations here. The film doesn't begin with any incredible action or giving us this familiar hero. The hero isn't some macho guy trying to protect the family, or even a flawed person who's trying to redeem themselves. It's quite literally a dying woman who has had it with the world and is ready for her time to come. She isn't trying to redeem herself. She doesn't want to save anyone or do one good thing before she dies. She just wants to die. And it's honestly a very effective opening and way to get our attention. And it's honestly real. It's not some drummed up Hollywood drama. It feels like these are very real people in a very sad, real situation that could be happening in real life. It's one of the most believable things in this entire franchise. This opening showed me a group therapy session where everyone in this hospice reads poetry to try and make each other feel better. It's a very bleak opening, but it's very impactful and does a great job of setting up the characters right away. Sam has a cat too and takes care of her, so you have this empathy towards her. She's a good person, you want to learn more about her, you want to know how she got to this point. Then after the opening prologue, the movie really kicks into Act 1, where Sam goes on a trip with the other members of her hospice care center to watch a show in the city. And they all are kind of excited to get out of there, but Sam wants one thing, pizza. It becomes her motivation through the movie to get to this one pizzeria, Patsy's, and she's upset when she learns she can't have it. But the great thing here is, as relatable as it is just having a slice of pizza, there's no more backing to it. And we learn later in the movie what the backing is. We learn that she wants to visit this pizza shop in the city that her dad used to play jazz music at. It's not so much the motivation to eat pizza, but the motivation to be close to the memories of her father. And she wants to spend one last time there before she dies. Already, we have this great through line for our main character. We don't exactly know why she wants pizza, but it's enough to establish a motive. We know she has this cat that she cares for, and she's dying, and she's done with the world. But she does want one thing, and that's pizza, and she also wants to take care of her cat. It's honestly a really good choice, and gives our character some agency in a realistic way, as well as humanity. So she gets very upset when they're at this show in the city, and all of a sudden, alarms and sirens go off, and her nurse tells her they have to evacuate. And the reason she gets so upset all of a sudden is because she wants pizza. She doesn't want to leave without getting it, and she becomes very upset. However, we then see why alarms and sirens are going off. There's apparently an alien invasion in the city, and meteors and debris from the sky start to rain down. Then everything kind of erupts into chaos as the hospice patients try to get out of the city, but as debris starts raining down and dust clouds start forming, they realize something has crashed down with the meteor, these aliens. The Quiet Place aliens, guys. Now, this is one issue I saw people had, and honestly, I do understand it. but I do see both sides to it. Some people think there should have been more emphasis on the alien invasion. After all, this is A Quiet Place Day 1, and we don't really get to see tons of the action that one would associate with Day 1 of a massive alien invasion. I mean, there's so many things to cover, from what would be the initial news response, to media covering what's going on, to military detecting the alien ship in the air, to the initial defense to try and stop the creatures. It could all make for an interesting movie, but the reason A Quiet Place Day 1 works is that it's not the exact type of movie they are making. Yes, it's Day 1, and yes, it does cover most of how this invasion starts, but it focuses on the human perspective. It roots its perspective through Sam. This focuses on a small-scale story in New York City, and it works because of that. If it had taken the story and tried to apply various different perspectives, let's say they encounter military, news, police, just more characters, it would honestly feel like a roadblock in Sam's personal story, or like something's coming up. And I get it, it doesn't always have to be distracting. You could find a way to factor all of these different plots in, but I think keeping it simple and the way this movie does it is effective enough. Like the military and police response, Cloverfield already kind of did that. But this movie kind of works because of how cut off the characters are. They're fending for their lives. We clearly are up against this alien force that no one is prepared to deal with. That itself is pretty impactful because of how alone and vulnerable the characters are. The movie works because it chooses to go the route of telling Sam's story, and in the process, we get a really great movie. There are also some complaints I've seen about how New York City's empty, or there's no people, or a lack of people. And yeah, if you want to nitpick, maybe we could see more death, but it does have a valid excuse of being a PG-13 movie and not wanting to be too gory for its rating alone. It is incredibly dark, and in my opinion, the bleakest of all of these Quiet Place films, though. Not just because of the aliens, but because of the main storyline of Sam's own struggles, and then you add the alien stuff on top, and it's pretty dark. Plus, the movie does a great job of showing what the aliens are doing with the bodies. We see them making nests out of them in the sewers below. We see people have taken refuge in a theater and try to be quiet to avoid aliens attacking them. And it all comes from stuff that's been built up before. In this theater Sam is at, she knows the place and returns there. There's a father who kills a guy who won't stop talking, but he's not some random guy. He's a father who Sam met at the show prior, and he also appears in A Quiet Place Part 2. How's that for connective tissue? I also like how they kind of slowly and quietly do build up, no pun intended with quietly, to the alien invasion. You don't need to see tons of cops or people navigating. All you need to see are a couple fighter jets in the air, which you do see several times, and I think that's enough to build up foreshadowing. You don't necessarily need this to cover so much police activity or show people stuck in traffic, although I do think all that stuff helps, and this is a big IMAX, big blockbuster movie, and they do cover a lot of that ground, but just to keep it like rooted in one location, just showing these fighter jets is enough in my opinion. And on top of all of that, I think the movie has a great buddy dynamic that really helps the film out, especially with the introduction of Joseph Quinn, or Eddie Munson's Eric. He's a scared guy from London who comes to New York for a job interview and has been hiding out in the city alone and afraid. What's really great about the Eddie Munson character is how he's just kind of thrown into the film, but it works because we are seeing the chaos of what is happening. You could argue he's just some random character that appears in the movie about a half hour in, but it's better, in my opinion, to focus on Sam early up, and then you have this random survivor kind of introduced. It works because of the chaos of the story. Focusing on Sam teaming up with this random survivor, the way it's incorporated into the story, he becomes a supporting character. There's actually a bait and switch earlier where we see two kids hiding from the monsters under a fountain and we think Sam might rescue them. But then she kind of subverts our expectation. She gives them food and still helps them out, but it's Eric, this grown man, who she ends up taking care of, not kids, after she runs into him on the street and tells him he must keep quiet. This, of course, could not have worked. He does feel kind of forced into the story, but it's a survival film, so we're already dealing with survivors trying to make it through this ravaged New York City. And there's emotional heft. Eric is alone, his parents are in London, and he's by himself and is scared, and there's this comforting bond he forms with Sam, who's also scared. And Sam is sick and not in the best shape, but she ends up being the stronger one, the one who motivates him and makes him feel better, and reassures him that everything will be alright. And then the film transitions into Sam's journey to help Eric get home, because she's already decided she wants to die. The film doesn't make this clear until the end, but it does an excellent job at having an entertaining and strong drive in its plot. These two people are just trying to get out of Manhattan alive. And this is where I said it feels like a really well-done 90s movie, like a 90s blockbuster with the artistic stylings of a Neon or A24 film. I mean, this really is a beautiful movie, which was honestly one of the most shocking parts. Like, this seriously had to be one of the best-looking blockbusters of the year, along with Dune 2. I mean, I thought this looked better than Furiosa at points. We also get redemption later on, after they've battled the monsters and all the things this franchise demands. It gives you those scares that you came for and gives you a great new setting like New York. You've seen these aliens in the woods and by the mountains and waterfalls and on an island, but you've never seen them in New York City where there's so many buildings and it's almost impossible to escape. And I really don't mind the use of the military here. Like I said, you just have helicopters flying over, telling everyone to be quiet, even though a fucking helicopter would make a ton of noise. But I digress. The movie does a great job at compacting the story, at doing what you can. You'd expect a movie of this size and scale, an alien invasion of New York, to be so big, but keeping the action and character dynamic grounded and within reasonable dimensions keeps it grounded. It has a terrific finale where, after battling aliens and wandering through the creature-ravaged New York City, Sam and Eric finally stumble across Patsy's Pizzeria that Sam had always wanted to go back to after that her father took her to. And it's a great emotional finale before the epilogue. The place is burned down, and Sam is sad that the place she wanted to go to so bad isn't how it used to be. But she goes in with Eric, and he makes her feel better. He turns the tables. It's interesting because up until this point, Sam has been helping Eric, and now he's helping her. And just from a story, coming full circle perspective, it really is satisfying. This is a satisfying ending. And the movie just does a great job with its plot. It pretty much does everything from a structural storytelling standpoint very well. The movie just has a heartwarming moment at the end. He and Sam dine on a slice of leftover pizza. They have a drink from behind the bar, and even he performs a magic trick to cheer her up since he can't play the piano due to those aliens, those pesky aliens. All of this to say the ending's really great and emotionally ties up the character arc, both of the character arcs. Sam has helped Eric and has saved him, and now he saves Sam, or at least he gives this dying woman her final wish, a chance to go back to the pizza place she would frequent with her father. And it hits hard. If you're going to make an action disaster movie like this, you should have more of these emotional beats. I really thought this worked so much better than the first movie, mostly because in the first movie, the emotional arc with the girl feeling guilt about her brother's death at the beginning was just so cliche. And also, they never speak, so you never really get as attached to the characters, in my opinion, as you do here. These people feel fully fleshed out. It feels real when you're seeing them help each other at the end. It feels like something that not even in an alien invasion setting would be emotional, and it works. And then we get to the end, which ties into the action and provides this satisfying end. Eric and Sam see a boat in the river filled with survivors escaping Manhattan, and as the two leave together, creatures start to congregate along the shore. Sam gives Eric her sweater and her cat, and then she runs off making noise to distract the creatures by smashing car windows. Car alarms activate, which attract the creatures. They run away from the shore, so they go after Sam, and Eric and her cat jump into the water and are pulled onto the boat by Henry, that guy from the theater at the beginning who Sam was with. Eric then finds a note in his jacket. It's written by Sam telling him to take care of her cat and thanking him for reminding her to live. And then Sam walks into the street and she's listening to Nina Simone's Feeling Good on her iPod. She accepts her death. She smiles and she unplugs her earphones and lets the music blare. And then one creature suddenly appears behind her, and that is it. It smash cuts to black. This is a really good movie. It's really good at not only defying expectations, but for being a blockbuster movie, this is incredibly mature. And I liked it more than any of the other Quiet Place films before. The first one just felt like too gimmicky, in my opinion. It was John Krasinski's big directorial film. I liked it, but I do think it was just like a cool concept that didn't really have anything else kind of added in. Quiet Place Part 2 was similar. You got to just see like people surviving. It didn't feel like it really was upgrading the story too much. Besides, there's an island, I guess. But this movie really did feel like an upgrade, not only emotionally, but the physical geography of this world. It's very different compared to what we've seen with previous Quiet Places. So I think if you're ever going to make a sequel, look at A Quiet Place day one. It's great, not only for how it upgrades its characters, but how it incorporates its story into a new setting. So I really, really did enjoy this movie. I remember walking out of this being like, that was amazing. Seriously, the direction had no business being this good. Like, the cinematography, the score, it was just simply amazing. Really beautiful shots, really great lighting. It's just something you don't really get in horror movies. This has a very mature look. A lot of movies have that kind of flat, glossy, very digital look. This doesn't, and it's rare. So definitely see this movie. If I had posted this I saw this opening night. I was very busy after, so I never really posted the review, but I would say see this in a theater. I loved it. I saw this in IMAX. So guys, thanks so much for watching. Happy Halloween.